Hello, and welcome to Phoenix Cinema Podcast, Film Club, where a community of film nerds just like myself gather to rate and review films of our choosing. Why? Because we love movies, and we love talking about them with each other most of all. I'm your host, Chris Austin, and joining me today is my co-host, Luke
Hello,
Parker.
Chris. Good to be back. Luke Parker, that's right.
Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you today?
I'm good, sir. Very well.
Very
Also
nice.
joining us is our favorite cinema manager of all time, Zalan Pall, manager of Phoenix Cinema. Hello, Zalan.
Good evening, folks. Always a pleasure. I'm always looking forward to these lovely chats with you guys.
Oh, we love it, and we love having you as well. And of course, you have chosen today's movie, which is the Swedish film from 1998, Show Me Love, also known as Fucking Amal.
Okay, so in Show Me Love, or Fucking Amal, life in a dreary provincial Swedish town feels like an endless trap for its restless teenage inhabitants. Ellen is popular, beautiful, and suffocatingly bored, desperately seeking a way to escape her mundane existence. Meanwhile, Agnes is isolated, deeply unhappy, and harbouring an intense secret crush on Ellen. When an impulsive, drunken dare leads Ellen to crash Agnes's disastrous birthday party and kiss her, it sparks an unexpected chain reaction. The two girls begin navigating the messy, terrifying reality of mutual attraction, forced to confront small-town gossip, social hierarchy, and their own hidden desires. So, Show Me Love. I think, Zalan, if I'm right, you chose this one to align with Pride Month. I think, Chris, you mentioned that last episode. We are filming this on the 26th of July, so a little bit behind the time, but do you want to maybe explain briefly why you chose this one?
Yeah, I thought that it would be nice to. I really enjoyed our conversations with Il Postino, and that was one of my favorite foreign films of the 90s, and this one is right amongst it. And I just thought that during Pride Month it would be nice to pick up a film that is very close to my heart, because I think it's there's other elements of it as well that I really appreciate, but it's basically a landmark film of not just in queer cinema, but in general of like a style of independent filmmaking, and also because it was such a long time I watched it, and I really enjoyed it at the time. So I thought it would be a nice idea to revisit the film to see how it stand against the test of time. And also there was some other ideas I had, and I just thought it's a summertime. I didn't want something too heavy, so it's one of those films that obviously there's different themes all the way through the movie, but it's more of the upbeat side of things.
Sure. And I have to say, I'm really glad you chose this film, because I think if you hadn't chosen it, this is probably one of those films that would never, ever have come onto my radar.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad that I did get the chance to watch it, because I think it's such an interesting little film.
Yeah, I usually watch these films with Carrie Ann, but on this instance I wasn't able to, and I was actually literally just talking to her about it today. And she was like, "What are you going to talk about on the call? Show Me Love." "Oh yeah, do you think I should watch it?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think you'd like it." I said, "But it's literally one of those films where you would never have seen it. You would never be compelled to click and watch that movie unless someone pointed you to it. In this case, Zalan, we have to for the podcast." And like exactly what you said, Luke, it's just one of those instances. That's why I love the film club, is that we just get to watch films maybe we never would have otherwise, and we're all the better for it. Yeah, because I think it's
And
really
it
good.
seems more often than not we're pleasantly surprised. So
But also there's an element of like we all seen coming of age, high school stories, and we kind of all been through the same, aspect and lens of American films and Hollywood films, or in general, there is a kind of you know, template that these films usually go. So I thought it would be nice to get a different culture take on it, on the same universal issues that teenagers go through in general. And also there's obviously a lot of other elements of it which we could obviously get into, the technical side of things as well, and the fact that it was a huge thing in Europe of how people view how independent cinema has been done, but also the fact that usually even in Europe at the time films are being not shot in small towns. We usually, even in Hollywood, usually if you have like a clear story, you probably gonna end up in San Francisco. There are some areas that usually you attach to certain stories. So the fact that it was shot in a small town and it's a different kind of take on the universal things that it's been showed in cinema as well. But it's just a refreshing take on it in my book.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I thought the same, because I really, really do love coming of age movies, and a lot of kind of the ones from Hollywood, they always tend to be, not all the time, but they often tend to be, quite hyper stylized and elements of glamour. And I think the biggest credit to give this film is just kind of how painfully authentic it feels. Really capturing what it feels like to be in this kind of awkward phase as a teenager, and all the different, the cruelties of high school, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's really refreshing to see.
Cruelties is right, because God, those kids are awful, aren't they? I mean, kids in general, aren't they just awful? Especially teenagers. Kids are the worst. I was thinking about the title. First of all, what a surprise. Was anyone as surprised as I am to find out that Amal was not a fucking person?
I thought the exact same.
But even though it's a place, I think it's a very odd title. This throwaway line that one of the characters says about wanting to leave this fucking Amal, this fucking place. And then to change it to a more PC version of Show Me Love. I'm like, what? It's like so generic a title. It's a bit weird. I think the film should have been called Kids Are Awful. I think that is apt.
Yeah. It's interesting because I actually don't think either titles are that good, because I think...
Agreed, yeah.
I think Show Me Love, it kind of makes me think that I'm just watching this like pure romance, whereas the film's actually got so much more to it than that.
Yeah.
And then Fucking 'Em Out, I think it's just a little bit odd, and it's not, again, similarly, it doesn't really represent
exactly
the film very well.
Exactly, yeah.
I think I agree and I disagree in somewhat. So what your general take, I completely agree with you, but I don't know how it worked. I think it was most countries in Europe it was called Fucking Homo, and then obviously in America and then UK speaking titles it had to be changed. And I think it's kind of, they picked it up because of the song. The Robin song at the time was very, very huge hit as well.
Oh.
So I think that kind of like that song in the end is the title giving song. But so I agree with your take on it on the title. But in terms of what the movie is, in a weird way, is fitting because it kind of goes against the grain. Like is kind of a rebellious title in a way. It's kind of a non-conformist to say like, oh well, this is the film industry and this is what you're supposed to do, and this is how you do like a film like this, and this goes completely against the waves. So that in that way I think it suits the film. But yeah, in a way like it doesn't really summarize what the film is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it does feel like the most 1998 film that I've ever seen. It was like time traveling. This takes place in Sweden, but it could have taken place anywhere around the world. And I think all teenagers are living the same sort of life they're influenced by the same pop culture. I loved looking at all these teenagers' bedrooms and seeing the pictures on their
Posters on the wall.
walls, the
Yeah.
posters of pictures of DiCaprio, posters of Romeo and Juliet and Titanic and Scream. I was like, oh my word. And they're calling each other on landline phones, and mobile phones are just starting to be a thing, and they're still like showing each other features of what the phone can do when they're out with their pals. I was like, it literally is a time travel movie. It was amazing.
Throwing rocks at the window.
Yes, throwing rocks. Yeah. Yeah.
And the sound,
I think
well, it's very, very 90s. I mean, that's the kind, and the rock songs in there as well. In general, like it's just. It's one of those films that if you show someone in 50 years' time this movie and they need to guess the time, I think you could narrow it down pretty
Yeah. Exactly.
I think something I really liked is that I totally agree. Like, the film is just so firmly set in this time period, and but despite that, to me, this film, I think, has the potential to be so timeless, just because despite everything changing in society, with like technology, just after we just spoke about Toy Story 5, Chris, it's like, despite all these different things and how different life is today, like fundamentally teenagers and people coming of age still go through the exact same things and emotions and awkward phases and interactions that happen in this film, and I think they always will. So
yeah, totally agree with that. And it's and exactly to what you were saying earlier, Luke, it's the level of realism, it actually feels like a documentary. It really does at times, from its aesthetic filmmaking style to the characters themselves. I mean, the performances across the board from the adults and the young actors are uniformly great. They all feel fully realized individual people, and I completely buy them. I do wonder. I mean, I don't actually know if all these kids were actual actors or if it was.
They all were amateur. Like none of them were really actors, and I don't think any of them really, from the kid actors, had a huge acting career. So it was kind of like, I think they all had like small things, but in general, there are a lot of like character actors in it that's their only film they ever done.
That's amazing.
On top of that as well, I read that a lot of the dialogue was encouraged by the director to just be completely improvised, and I think it's interesting that even in a completely foreign language, that still comes across like quite obviously, and just adds perfectly to the authenticity of it for me.
Oh, it's amazing. It's like we very recently spoke about Ken Loach's movie, and I'm getting similar vibes again, and being stunned by the level of performances from non-professional actors. It's blowing my mind.
But isn't it that? Yeah, you're right. But don't you think that might like take some pressure off on an actor? What do you think in terms of that? If you're a young person and you have to kind of like, a role is to memorize the lines and things like that, maybe it's more liberating, the fact, as you mentioned, like Kaz as well, that about the dynamic with the director and the rest of the cast, rather than just, you need to get this line in this manner and things like that.
I totally agree. The thing is, there are young actors, there are child actors who are trained to, in movies today, who are absolutely incredible actors. But in the examples that we've seen and discussing recently, including this one, I do think that there's just a malleability to a young person, to a young performer, that yes, what you're saying, Zalan, like a director has a freedom to shape and mold a performance. And yes, there seems to be a freedom to their performances. It's like when you're younger, there's not as much, and it's hard to say that for teenagers because teenage years is a very awkward phase. But when you're an adult, you're so much more conscious of training, of your appearance, of people's opinions about you, and everything is so structured and rigid from a technical standpoint when you're making a movie. But I think about the young boy from Kess, I think about the kids in this movie, and yeah, they seem liberated. They seem completely liberated by it. And so it doesn't surprise me that, yeah, they are, once again, it's another example of non trained, non professional actors blowing us away.
I'm curious, Chris, as an actor yourself, if you had a role and in that role you were encouraged to improvise lines on the spot, how would you react to that? Would you maybe panic a bit and think, "Oh, you got to come up with something off the cuff"? Or do you think you'd be able to embrace that?
I think maybe when I was younger and in acting school, I would have embraced it more. Maybe I was a bit more courageous. Now
Sure.
that kind of thing scares me. I wouldn't want to. I feel like I want to stick word for word to the script. That's my safety net. But I do think it all comes down to the director and the crew and the cast, like how safe you feel. I think the more comfortable you are, the more willing you are to take risks, which I think is always better. Yeah, totally.
And the type of characters you play is important as well, and that's one
Yes.
element that I really appreciated in this one. That and the one thing I know is it's a nitpicking thing, but what really bugs me with certain films when really clearly older people play a much younger, like a 30-year-old playing a teenager,
Yeah.
and when you know that actor or actress, that bugs me. So in this one, obviously they all playing their actual age, so I think they were
Hmm.
14 or 15 or 16 when they shot the film.
Right,
So
right.
in a way, if you have to play a 14-year-old and you are 14, then it's probably easier to talk about stuff that what you
Hmm.
going
Hmm.
through rather than, let's say, like 22-year-old trained actors, like, oh, have to remember what it felt like 7 8 years
Hmm.
ago. So maybe
Yeah.
perhaps in terms of casting as well, that it's more about, and that's sometimes interesting because I think that was a film I saw a couple of years ago, a tennis film that we discussed. Um, Julie Keeps Quiet, that they the director wanted a tennis player who was not an actor to play the role rather than having an actor try to learn play tennis, because it felt it's more authentic to the
Hmm.
character to go through the struggles of training a tennis player, and the stuff you have to do,
Hmm.
and it's easier to train someone to be an actor in that situation rather than having a professional who's like knows the lines and how to deliver it. But maybe that's not where they wanted the director, wanted more originality and spontaneity and the interaction between that. You feel like that, you, as you mentioned, Luke, and Chris, about the style, that you feel like you're just part of a documentary, and you are
Yeah.
the camera is the audience, right? Really, you're the audience, and not like something that film to be performed for you.
Yeah. It's crazy. It feels like real fly on the wall stuff, and I wonder why. I don't know if anyone has the answer to this, but why did Lucas Moodysson, who this is his debut, right? Why did he make this movie? He wrote it, he directed it, because it feels personal. It feels as if this is an experience that's been either lived in or observed. So I'm wondering how semi biographical it is, how close he is to this story to want to tell it. You know what I mean? Does anyone have that
No,
info?
I think it's interesting enough the fact that this film is written and created by a heterosexual man who's, I think he was like 30 or something when he made this. Full stop. Um,
Hmm.
I think I know from what I was reading about him, he was quite a prolific poet before he moved into filmmaking. But no, I'd also be super curious to kind of see what the inspiration for this film was, or, or how personal it is. It's hard to know.
I think there's an element of it's interesting you mentioned about he's a background in general, but it's interesting because I really like this director, and I watched all his films. It's one of my favorite sort of like not that known to the public, directors. And he had actually the film I wanted to show first was Lilia Forever, but it's a very hard topic, so I was like, I'd rather not get into underage trafficking, in the summertime.
Hey, we're ready
hard.
for it.
But at some point we might, but all this filmography is kind of like considered somewhat a feminist director in a way. There are other things, like throughout his career that he portrayed, and but that's I think the element of it as well that's probably more to his character is growing up in a small town, and the kind of divide between being in a big city and how certain levels of information trickles down to society and behaviors as well, stigmas and certain things, that's a topic of this film as well. So I think he kind of, in my opinion, he had these issues that he wanted to tackle, and the most authentic way is to if you want to have a strong message, in my opinion, is to put it into the mouth of a characters that are probably younger and kids, because you're more relating to it, doesn't feel more preachy, it feels more down to earth and closer to like maybe to get the people who the other side of things to get more understanding, rather than showing something more dramatic or tragic, and you're supposed to feel sorry for this character and stuff. It's more, I think, more organic. So I think that's probably the idea behind it. But also, as you mentioned, Luke, you're talking about the poet who has not done any films before, so he's probably, that's why there's a very uniqueness to it, because it's not following sort of a film scroll like how to do your debut feature. It's more into a different style of filmmaking, because that's what he found probably working for him in this case.
Yeah,
It's
super unique.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Chris.
Well, just quickly to that, how it's just incredible how successful it is from this, like you said, Luke, this male heterosexual guy to position a story. Usually you would think, and maybe that's not the case for everybody, but for a male writer and director to find your entry point, you kind of use yourself, so there will be maybe a strong male character involved in one of the lead roles, and how authentic it feels with these two female characters telling what is essentially a very universal story which crosses all genders. It's remarkable, truly remarkable, to the point where I even had to check, did he write it too? Was this written by a female at least? It wasn't, it was him. I am so impressed. Yeah.
And to that point, the male characters actually, there's a lot of critique, and there's a lot of, in terms of like stereotypes portrayed, that usually it's not being like tackled in this way in films. And I mean, if you put it in context as well, this is the 90s, like usually. This film, in my opinion, is ahead of its time in a way. No wonder that it's been rejected in America at the time, but it was a huge hit in Europe, and in general, I think I found it very refreshing. And as you mentioned a little bit about like timelessness, I felt that going back to it, it's a sense of nostalgia, but I really enjoyed. Going through and seeing what was that slice of period in time felt like being from that area. And then as the film success led to obviously a lot of other filmmakers deciding that you don't need to put a big city and to the main focus point, you can have a small town and just have a very story driven idea rather than big studios and shot in real locations. That was unique at the time as well. The lighting they used and stuff. So that probably comes from someone who they haven't read the manuscript of how to make a film. He's just like, I'm a poet. I really like to use this medium, and let's see what we can do, you know. And it worked magic for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think, you know, as I said earlier, like the film feels timeless, and then even like today, where obviously homosexuality is generally much more accepted, and I think it comes back to kind of what you were just saying before about the filmmaker, in that maybe to me the film feels less about homosexuality, and it's more just using that as a tool to explore other things about, you know, social stigmas and growing up in a small town and everything like that, which will always be relevant. And it was kind of just using this relationship between these two girls as a tool to explore those other issues, basically.
Yeah, and if that's what he's done, it's incredible, because the way the relationship unfolds between these two central characters, what are their names? Ellen, and Agnes. It feels so wildly authentic in terms of there's just a constant push and pull, and I don't know, it's so hard to explain, but the evolution of their relationship from scene to scene, from moment to moment, doesn't feel like screenwriting or storytelling. It feels like real life human behavior. This is how you respond to feeling pressurized and bullied in one moment. This is how you respond to feeling intense desire in this moment. This is how you respond to acting on that intense desire. This is how you respond to peer pressure. It was like there was never any moment where I was like, not quite buying this. You know, I was astounded, because it was like I was watching life unfold in front of me. Incredible.
And it's impressive how it strings all this together in actually such a short amount of time. Like the film's like 85 minutes long.
Right.
It doesn't linger on any moment, really. It's just like you said,
goes forward every time. You feel like that we're progressing, and you feel like it doesn't feel like a feature debut, right? It feels like a director which kind of funny that we're talking about, you know, like a lot of in areas of the film when there's just probably improvisation, but feels like there's a structure to it, and he wants to get to somewhere, and then he just leads you the way, and then lot of things happening that is I think it's a lot of people can relate to, who not even just in Sweden but just in general, you know, the social dynamics, and you know how gossip goes around, and how, you know, sometimes, you know, could be like the stigmas you mentioned, and there's this incredible scene between the two of them, when they talk about, you know, standing, there's this a drain, which is like a superstition in Sweden, that if you know, like you step on it, then, you know, bad things happening, and you know they all bringing up all the negative things about AIDS and all the social stigmas, and then she's the main character is like, well, I'm standing on it, like you just telling all this gossip as the social, you know, isolation I'm supposed to feel. I'm standing here, I'm completely fine. So that's that kind of rebelliousness, and the other side of the naivety as well, and then how both of them, they feel like, you know, authentic, that's you understand that that's how someone should behave, and that's completely fine that someone, you know, feels differently for, you know, whatever reason, and those things are and some of the things that I think they're iconic scenes as well, like some, you know, very famous things in it that I found it. I don't know if you found the little humor in it as well, because there's some of the things that I found it was kind of funny as well, that especially with the two girls, how they interacted, you know.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I think the film is littered with like really well done little bits of quite subtle comedy. I think one of the standout scenes for me personally was where she's with um her boyfriend Johan, her sister. They're all like watching TV, playing that bingo, and then they start kind of having that discussion of what a man's role is and what a man should know about versus what a woman should know about. And then she just slowly takes herself off into the next room and just from the next room phones him and dumps him there and then on the spot. I think that's a great scene. It probably stood out for me.
Really good scene. Yeah, really, really good scene. You're right. Actually, when you think about it, the movie's littered with great scenes, and what's amazing is that the entire movie and each individual scene just represents that feeling of what it is to be young, the fear of being young, the power of being young, the thrill of being young, the pressure of being young. Those elements are in every single moment of this movie. And one of my favorite things is actually the way that Ellen is introduced with her sister. It is such a confrontational relationship, and yet they adore each other. They can't let go of each other. They hate each other. I mean, it's siblings in a nutshell. You know, it's so, and I think the sister was fantastic in the movie as well. Yeah, it's incredible. But I mean, as much as everyone is incredible in the movie, those two central performances, Ellen, played by Alexandra Dahlstrom, and Agnes, played by Rebecca Liljeberg, absolutely outstanding. And Ellen in particular, I feel like she catches your eye because she blows into this movie like a hurricane. And I think there's an element of danger to her as well. There really is. To the point where, I don't know, I kind of found myself really wanting to protect Agnes from Ellen because I was genuinely concerned.
Yeah, but well, I mean, for like the solid first third of this movie, right? Ellen is completely unlikable, and this is what we were talking about earlier with kind of the raw cruelty that the film doesn't shy away from at all. And it's kind of interesting, to be honest, the quite abrupt U-turn that I felt myself feel towards Ellen's character. Because genuinely, for the first kind of third movie, I was like, these people are just are horrible. They're terrible. And then, like you said, there is this change, and suddenly Ellen becomes a bit of an enigma, and
Yeah.
you start to kind of empathize with her and how she's feeling, and it's just quite an unusual change to witness. And then, like you said, with Agnes, obviously, from the very get-go, it's completely different. Like, she's so vulnerable and unhappy, and yeah, there's just this, you want to protect her, you want her to avoid Ellen as much as possible, and I just find the dynamic between them really, really interesting as the movie progresses.
But it's
Yeah,
great setup,
yeah.
isn't it? Because you know, in the beginning, it's that she's in love with her, so it's already, you have more information in a way, and as you say, Luke, you kind of, as you're an audience, you feel sorry for Agnes because you know what's coming, because she's 100%, and there's this huge storm of a character. You think like, well, she's gonna crush her, right? And but that's what I found it, because of probably the unconventional director and writing process as well, potentially, that all these characters has flaws, but they all have a heart. You know, even the characters that they're horrible, they still care for each other. You know, like I love that scene when, you know, the sister goes out to console the other guy. Like, usually it wouldn't happen in films. You're thinking like, oh, you've been dumped. You're the kind of a sort of a butt joke of a character in a way, and but still goes over to, you know, like console. And that, so there is, even though they messy and teenagers and they all have, you know, like their own flaws, but they all still, you know, there's this bond. I guess being in a small town as well, everyone knows each other in a way. That probably maybe works in a different level than in a bigger location.
Yeah, and I really I don't know what to make of Ellen's character still. I mean, she's certainly interesting, she's certainly captivating, um, but I don't trust her still. And even at the end of the movie ends on apparently a very happy note and in a very happy place. Do you both think that can in any way continue or last? Because I personally think they're too young. There is a storm of emotions going on inside them. They're also super confused about they're trying to figure it out. They're maybe not confused about each other, that's pretty certain, but also Ellen seems like she will blow with the wind one day to the next. I mean, there's a line that she gives when we're introduced to her in the beginning of the movie where her sister says, "Weren't you in love with so and so?" And Ellen says, "Yeah, that was yesterday." You know, and the end of the film where it's just like, "Hey everyone, it's my girlfriend. We're leaving now." You know, it's like that seems a little too easy. You know, that seems nice now, but life isn't. It doesn't really work
Sure.
like that.
I, I totally get what you're saying, right? But I'm cautiously optimistic, and I think at the end of the day, right, it's a coming of age film. We were all young once. We know that things change as the wind changes, and how you feel about things. And at the end of the day, it's a movie. It's got to come to an end, and it's got to come to some nice, well, it doesn't have to be a nice conclusion. It's got to come to some conclusion. Um, but I genuinely, based purely on the scene at the end in the toilet cubicle, I was fully buying, this genuine relationship and connection between these two people. And I think because of that, I left the film feeling cautiously optimistic about the future of them together. Like I didn't kind of have the thoughts that you had at all, to be honest.
But you know
It-
what? It's sometimes, like it's interesting because I think what makes me be on your side a little bit, Luke, is not even the when they come back out, because it's obviously it's about self discovery as well, and then Agnes is more of sure of herself in a way, but that also means that she has more of an issue to society wise, to be part of the group, whereas Ellen is the other way around. So they all wanna go to different direction and then just kind of meet in the middle. But what made it work for me is that extra little bit in the end, like when they all talk about the chocolate milk and stuff, and it's just that it just that's such a nice cute way to end it, and it's they all in their happy place and stuff, and for me that was the one that it made me push towards the positive side. But obviously Alan is such a, I don't think you can predict. If you can't predict one single day, how could you predict? How would it end up? But for me, it felt like it's a positive ending. And to be honest, it's if you look at it in context, it's hardly ever happens in queer cinema, and especially at the time, it's always even the way they've been portrayed. And it was great that we were getting like films about these topics, but still there was a stigma about you have to be isolated, you have to be the tragic element of it, and that's sometimes obviously it's important to see those things as well, but can they get a happy ending sometimes? So I think as a lot of people celebrated that was actually
yeah, well, I think that what's great about what Moodysson does with the ending of the movie is that he allows the movie to end on a happy moment, on a happy note between them. But he doesn't necessarily allude to the fact that they're going to be happy together, because really the film kind of just ends. In a way, I was expecting more. They've left, they've gone home, they're having a conversation, end of the movie. So he ends at a very unnatural point, I felt. And that feels nice, that does feel positive, but he's not saying, yeah, I mean, you could look at it both ways. Because again, maybe it's the cynical part of me, but nothing is resolved at the end of this movie in terms of their entire problem throughout this film was parents, friends, their social lives. This is 1998. This is a small town. Nothing is resolved by them walking out of that bathroom and announcing to the world that they're together. It's not. There's far more tension to come. But to end it where he did, for him to choose to end it there was nice. Even if I don't believe that it would work, not even because of outside pressures or the way society views them, but because of Ellen herself. I think that she's.
Or don't you think that it allows you to feel more authentic about it, because that's more realistic rather than a film giving you sort of like a story that, because then if you feel about that doubt, I think that's actually good, because that
Yes.
makes it for a teenager as well. Things change, as you mentioned, Luke. But that's situation change. So to give it in a kind of like a definite situation, leave the story there, that
Yeah.
wouldn't be authentic in a way, because it's kind of a whirlwind, like pun intended, because that's the main song in the film. But yeah, that's why I think it's I think for me it works. But I just love that there is a little bit of hopefulness, and that was nice to see.
Fair enough.
I think, I actually completely forgot about that very ending scene. In my head, it finished as they kind of came out the toilet cubicle. But something I actually really, really liked, and it's kind of the reason maybe I disagree with you a bit, Chris, is that in the fact that I fully buy this relationship and the connection there is, right at the end, that final scene with the chocolate milk in the bedroom, Agnes doesn't say a single word. She's just there sipping and smiling and laughing at everything that Ellen has said. And if you rewind back to the scene where I guess you could say she fell in love with Agnes, it was Agnes coming out of her shell finally, and her actually taking the moment to speak to her. I think it was when they were on the bridge over the motorway or something like that, and she was telling her all about what she wants to do when she's older, and having some deep, meaningful conversation. And it was I just quite like that flip and that contrast of going from having Agnes kind of spill her worldview to Ellen, and Ellen falling in love, to just having Agnes there at the end, sitting quietly and enjoying hearing Ellen just waffling about chocolate milk. I just think it was a lovely way to wrap up the movie.
And that's probably the only time she smiles in a movie. Like that's
Probably.
when she feels really, happy place. Because in a way, that what she wrote out in the first, image of the film, right types of stuff. That's what actually happens in the movie. So it's a foreboding, foreshadowing stuff as well. I like those things, in the movie. So yeah, I thought that was sweet. I mean, really.
And speaking of their one night out together, that sparks off the whole. First of all, what a fucking night, right? There is so much that happens in that night. When Agnes is getting the razor, the blade, I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, no. You want to reach through the screen and say, stop, So that in itself, the way Moodysson constructs that whole thing where Ellen comes back to the house at such an extremely vulnerable moment for Agnes without ever knowing it, is fascinating in itself. But what they end up doing afterwards, going out together, and who just mentioned it about what they want to do when they're older. Again, and I know we just spoke about Toy Story 5 and the feelings of nostalgia that gives me, but I was thinking to myself, yeah, these are kids. They've got their whole lives ahead of them. They still get to have these conversations about, what do you want to do with your life? I think about myself, I'm like, oh, fuck, I should be doing it. Those conversations are decades old by now. But it evokes the feeling of youth in you. You remember those moments, and what they do that night, it's so dangerous. I mean, it's thrilling because they're just throwing caution to the wind and they're being kids. and it's like, hey, let's just hitchhike out of this place, and you're going, oh, this isn't a good idea.
But when I
But
first saw that old guy
the
pull up
guy,
and look at them like that, I was like, this
yeah,
film's going to take another curveball and go somewhere I'm not expecting.
But
yeah,
I
is
think, I guess he hits you guys a bit differently because I know culturally hitchhiking in the UK is completely, different. Like, but there's some parts of Europe, like where I grew up, hitchhiking is a very normal thing. People go, so that element of it is not extreme. What they actually try to do, it is extreme. Because not to mention the Stockholm is probably 180 miles away, so it's not even like in a vicinity. So that's an absurd idea as well. But yeah, but as you're right, Chris, that it kind of like it gives you back that kind of youth energy and like let's just do it, carpe diem and let's just go for it, and
yeah,
that is great. And but also like it reminded me of the pressure as well, because I don't know if it was for you as well, but I growing up, that was, and it's funny that it's Sweden and in Hungary and England, it's all the same things, but it's like when you're a kid and you first have a conversation with an adult, well, people probably, strangers, gonna say, so what you gonna be when you're older? That's what
yeah,
usually, the question. So
yeah,
when you hear it all the time and then maybe you're getting unsure about yourself, then that those pressure points as well, and then even those scenes about that need grades and what the male point of view and the society and how they view themselves, and so there's a lot of things being like serious messages told via the characters who are children and kids, and then that is what made me appreciate things as well, especially there's this scene as well and the little boys ask about what a lesbian is, and I think it's
mm,
the way that stream constructed and just delivers the message as well. It's
mm,
just such a like authentic way, and rather than being preachy or you should feel this or that, it's just kind of summarize it and the way the parents act to it as well, because
yeah, yeah,
it says it in a very nice way, but when she finds out about the daughter, all of a sudden, like, oh, it's my daughter, really?
right,
But
right,
it's a human reaction, right? Nobody's perfect, so
yes,
you could feel about certain things. You can have a worldview of something, but it doesn't mean that you personally you feel the same way at the moment and stuff. So that those little ways that being portrayed that just added things to the intensity.
totally. And it's not like the mum's initial reaction is in any way a stain on that character, because that could just be a reaction to, oh, I need to protect her now because I know how people think and I know how she'll be viewed by society, so again, the word is authentic, and that it just feels like that through every frame of this movie. And
And yeah,
I've been that. Sorry, look.
well, I was just going to say on top of that, at the same moment, is I was then a little bit kind of conflicted about how I felt when the mum then went and, an absolute gross violation of her privacy, went and read her, what was basically her diary. But I couldn't help but feel a bit conflicted at that choice, because it's like, based on what we've seen of Agnes so far, it's like she has every right to be worried and concerned, but at the same time, you are just completely disrespecting her privacy. And obviously, we have to get into a massive discussion about what's good or bad parenting. But I think from her perspective, from the mum's perspective, like, it's just an interesting thing to think about, and I don't know how I would react in that same situation.
There are in life sometimes there are use those situations,
Sure.
and then what you have to do is you have to make the call that is you think it's the best thing for that person, even though that person might hate you for it, and because you don't know, you care for that person, so while you have done it was unforgivable thing, but you've done it because of you care and you worried, you don't want to be that going through anxiety and depression, or you want to know that it's not going to be another, we need to talk about Agnes kind of situation as well. So, it's that is the situation. But that's what was great about it, because you put the parent in a situation when there's nothing you could do. And her reaction was justified and valid as well. And
Yes.
that's what happens in a family. We all saying stuff that we don't mean, or the in the heat of a moment, but you when you look back and then you analyze, or you just maybe dwell on it a little bit, realize why that person's done that.
I
Yeah,
think.
and sorry,
No, sorry, go on, Chris.
I'm glad you mentioned that moment, Luke, because it speaks to how smart the film is. Because what the mother does in that instance is wrong, and yet I understand why she's doing it. The daughter's response in that moment, I completely understand it. But it's a very interesting thing, because Agnes is still technically a child, and where the movie finds these characters of Ellen and Agnes is at the tipping point. It's at the point from them going from being a child to becoming an adult. And but they're not quite there yet, and yet they are, and that's what they're trying to figure out every day. So yes, she shouldn't be going through her stuff, but she should be going through her stuff, but she shouldn't. And what Agnes does and Ellen does alone, what they do in the stranger's car in the back seat, is very adult. That is them being, adult women, independent women. It's not
Okay.
something they're going to go home and share with their parents. But when they're with their parents, they're like children. They fight with their siblings like children in front of their parents. They moan and complain and look for guidance to their parents when they're with them. So I don't know, because I'm not a parent, but I can imagine when a child gets to those teen years of 14 to 18, that is tough. From how much space do I give them, and how much are they still very much my child and they need me to protect them? That's why that scene is like, oh, I mean, it's how do you define that? It's so clever.
I think in a similar vein, I thought the dad's role was pretty interesting. I think
Mm.
the interactions between him um and Agnes, you know, it's so clear it comes from a place of such love, but as a parent, you learned there's no textbook for this kind of thing, right? You have to work with what you think's right, and I think he does a really good job. But I think the film is portraying quite well, kind of that that uncertainty for the dad, and like he doesn't really know how to handle this situation. But um, yeah, I think both parents were equally as interesting as any of the kids in the film.
And
And
going
and
back, sorry, Chris, that you what you mentioned about the directors, maybe that is the character that's probably, in my opinion, closest to him as an autobiography,
that's
because
interesting.
he's the one
Mm.
who's citing poetry, and it's kind of maybe, and he, I don't know if when the director had his children, but he has 3 kids, and so maybe he saw certain things that like. Maybe going through, because he's his other films as well. There is a brilliant film of We Are the Best, that's about an all-female punk rock girl group in Sweden, youngsters as well, teenagers. So you guys gonna like that film as well if you get a chance to see it. So there's
That
this
sounds
same
good.
theme in his whole filmography as well. But maybe that's the character, and I'm saying like, oh, maybe he put himself in there. He's the father who's overlooking these characters in a way, but
Mm.
doesn't
I
put
love that.
himself into it too much. And the way the filmmaking as well, it's not about the way the style they shoot it, and like look at the angles as well. But it's a lot of close-ups, a lot of like documentary style, hand
Mm.
pretty camera angles, very guerrilla filmmaking and stuff. So yeah, I think that's interesting to bring that character as well. But
I
that's
love that perspective there, Zaylin. Yeah, why not? Why not? That does make me wonder. And this film does really highlight that being a teenager is the Wild West. I mean, when you are trying to figure yourself out, among societal pressures and demands and expectations, it doesn't matter if you come from a well balanced home with loving and supportive parents. These two parents of Agnes seem very loving and supportive to me, and yet they could have lost their daughter to suicide in one night like that. Had Ellen not shown up and interrupted this thing, it could have happened. And it just goes to show you it is rough being a kid. And that comes across really, really well. I mean, it's terrifying how well it comes across, but how thin that line can be when and I've felt that as a kid. I have felt, I don't know if I've ever felt that to those extremes, but I felt like the world is ending, especially and it comes to relationships, when you're trying to figure those out for the first time. My God.
Yeah, first heartbreaks, it's hard to go through, isn't it? Because you not experienced it before, and then that feels like that is the only thing matters, isn't it? So that's, and then also it's not just that, it's not just your own personal feelings, it's more about what society wants you to do as well, like,
Exactly. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the way it is. It's like
Mm,
sometimes mentality and stuff. So I think that's why I think the director wanted to make sure that Ellen's character is kind of try to go against everything, in sort of like every situation. It feels like that she just wants to do something different than the rest of the group, for
mm,
various reasons. um, and it's funny how it's kind of, obviously it's falling in love is not something you can prepare or you could create yourself, but she kind of manifested, oh, I want to fall in love today, and by the charm of and the circumstances, it actually does happen. So it's kind of, it maybe like a low lead a fairy tale in a way as well, in a very realistic way.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an almost, well, at least to me, it felt there was. I just felt this familiarity watching it, because even though I can't relate to so much that's going on in these characters' lives, it's like we all went through this phase in our life as a teenager where how the world sees you supersedes anything else, and that pressure you put upon yourself to kind of portray yourself in a certain way or be seen as something in particular. I think it's something everyone can relate to at this kind of awkward phase in their life.
It's a human behavior
100%.
as well. We all act differently in different set of circumstances as well. It's funny, even culturally. Like I know from myself as well. Like I'm not a fast talker in general, but when I speak in Hungarian, when I speak with my friends at home, you know, I realize myself, I'm just a different character. I'm
Right.
myself, but
Right.
it's a different side of me, and then it's like your perception and your body and your thought process is like we're adjusting to our surroundings in a way. And sometimes you could be stronger when you have something that you stand up for something, and sometimes we buckle under the pressure because we just don't want to face it, or we don't want to see the circumstances reflect on us, in a manner that is not, positive based on, the other people. And it's a very topic that it exists now. It's just different ways, we
Mm,
talk about social media and other elements. That was a different other things in the 90s, but there it's still the common themes are being a teenager and going through the social anxieties and then what comes with it. That's present all the time.
yeah. And exactly to what you're saying, yeah, being, especially in an instance like this, with kids so young, being homosexual, this movie could come out in 2026, and I think it would, still have an impact. But but not as much as it would, considering it came out in 1998. It feels, to what you were saying earlier, Zaylin, ahead of its time. It feels dangerously ahead of its time, almost like in your face, so, which I love. And yeah, I don't know, because I mean, even I think I mentioned this last time on the last call, Zaylin, when I read out what this pick was that you had chosen. I only heard about Show Me Love a few weeks ago, reading a review of, there's a new film called Girls Like Girls. And in this review, the review basically said, Show Me Love from, 1998 does this movie better. And these are from people I follow, certain critics who know their shit. And I was like, who? What's that? And then next thing you know, you've picked it. So
that's nice. Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, that might, you need to check out that film.
Yeah, it feels I can't quite think of the word for it, but it's bold. It really is. And I don't know, yeah, again, to the feelings of being a kid, and that's maybe where my cynicism comes with the end of the movie, is that I remember feeling intense feelings, intense emotions, about other people. And I remember proclaiming once that I loved this girl, and I cried about it. No, I didn't. We were never even in a relationship. I mean, I observed her from a distance. We said a few words to each other. It's so weird, actually. I woke up today thinking about that. And I remember I did it in front of my cousin. I cried in front of my cousin, and he was shocked. How embarrassing. But when you think about the age I was then, I didn't know how to deal with it. Yeah, you don't know how to. Yes. Yeah. And can I just say, one of the most cringiest things I've ever seen on screen was in this movie, with the parents and the young brother waiting for someone to show up for this girl's birthday party.
That whole sequence. Jesus. Watching it through my fingers. Yeah.
Oh my God, that was, yeah.
And when she starts berating the girl in the wheelchair when everyone's just sat around trying to enjoy a nice dinner.
You know what? It's funny you mentioned, because I felt like it felt like a Ricky Gervais scene, like some of the like a little bit like pre-office stuff, like the awkwardness and even saying something very offensive, and it's just that was hilarious. And then also, as I said, like the way it's structured as well, because you already know that Ellen and Jessica, they're coming towards there, and there's nobody there. So the audience is ahead of the characters in terms of, that something's happening, the conflict's happening. And when she starts crying and doing like, but they just, her love just coming over, she doesn't know. And, so that impacts the way you look at the scene as well, because you have more information than the character. And I love that.
But the thing is, the information that we have as an audience is making us feel worse, because it's already bad enough that, first of all, no one showed except for the one person she didn't want and was so awful to her. But now you've got these two showing up who don't even want to be there and are just coming for the joke of it all. And when they lock themselves in her room with the bottle of wine that her mother's given them, and she can't even get into her own bedroom. It is just, I mean, it's excruciating. Yeah. And then the dare of, I'll make out with her, how much will you pay me? So you're doing this out of it's just a joke to you. It was tough. Honestly.
Did all this feel excessively cruel to you, or did it still feel fully authentic to how you felt about the rest of the film?
It felt authentic while being excessively cruel, and that does feel like you can get to that level as a kid. I have done. And what do you think?
I don't know. I think as I was watching it, I did think, okay, this is a little bit ridiculous, but I agree that, okay, maybe both can be true.
Right.
it. I think maybe that's just why it was so painful, is because it still felt so real. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. It's also, I think it's one of those that it is cruel, but they don't meant to be. They're just doing it for the fun of it. They don't intentionally want to hurt her, and she clocks it straight away. Like, because even when they're leaving, she says, "Oh, I should go back to apologize." So she's already knows that she's done something,
Right.
and she
Right.
lingers
Mm-hmm.
on to that. But that
Mm-hmm.
scene was so fascinating, and the main actress playing Agnes was so fantastic in it, because that's the situation when she knows what's happening. She knows that these girls are in the room, and she's obviously worried about, oh, they're gonna see my message on there.
Yeah, that's
But when the mom
terrifying.
comes over, she needs to pretend that, oh, like, it's, don't worry, that it's just,
This is
so
normal.
it's such a
Yeah.
horrible situation to, like, that is just the worst thing can happen to you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what? I've seen it in real life. Like, I don't want to go to segue too much, but we're doing in Phoenix a lot of birthday parties, and then I've seen it happening, that, and it's just such a sad thing, but it's also, it's happened, so it's true. But so I'm bringing out the cake, as mentioned, like we decided when to bring out and put on the happy birthday song and stuff. So I'm bringing out the cake, and the kid is crying, and the kid is crying and telling the parents that the other kids were bullying him, or like they're fighting and stuff. And it's like, and he was like, why did you invite them? They always, so it's like, obviously the parents don't know. They invite everyone in the class. They didn't know
Right.
that they
Right.
invited bullies. And I was like, oh my God, what to do here? It's like, the
Mm-hmm.
birthday kid is crying, and it's like, it's such an awkward situation in a way, but that's what sometimes, it happens. And they didn't want to bully him in that instance. When I saw, they were just play fighting and stuff, but the things happen. And then I saw the kids, embarrassment with the parents and stuff, and I felt so sorry for him. But it's like, that's kid stuff, isn't it? Like, you people, we all go through these things, and
Yeah,
it's hard
it's
to see
it's
sometimes.
complex. Yeah, I think it's complex, and I do think two things can be true. And it really does just remind me of Kess. It really does. I'm finding a lot of comparisons with that, but I love how Moodysson also doesn't let Agnes off the hook, really. Agnes, you care for her, she's vulnerable, you feel for her, you want to protect her. She's also got moments where she can be cruel, like she is in the birthday party to the one person who showed up. And I do love that she attempts to make a reconciliation later in the movie that is just rebuffed. The easiest thing would have been to have them shake hands and hug it out. No, it's not as easy as that. And it reminds me of in Kess, our main character there is constantly beat upon by his family, by his teachers, by his classmates. And then in that one moment where they're all going to see the principal and they rope that small child into going with them and hiding the cigarettes on him, our main character grabs him from behind and gets him to and I love how there's no such thing as a bright shining angel in anything. No, humans are far more complex. There is far more shadow than there is light, and Moodysson does the same thing here. And I think it all leads back to that authentic word.
Do do you think the film does enough in kind of justifying the other characters' view towards Agnes? Because something that was a bit apparent to me is that Agnes never really acts or behaves or really comes across as the outcast that the other characters seem to think she is. She never, nothing in her behavior is, you know, much of an outlier or particularly awkward or different. And I, I just, I wish I kind of knew where the attitude towards Agnes was founded in.
I think some of it might be embedded in that, like, it kind of allows us to fill out the blanks and stuff. But what I liked about it is, and that it's not a typical, and then a great thing that you picked up on, because what I found, this is actually a strength of a movie, that it would have been easy to have a piercing girl, or like typical stereotypes, and he says like, oh, you know what, you look different, you are different, whereas it's just a normal person, and it's normal to have, you don't have to, it's normal to have these feelings, and being different, and stuff, and that doesn't have to always be, like like a so in your face thing, so that's what made me feel her really vulnerable, and care for her, more. And then actually, yeah, you, as you're going through this film, you feel for her, and then you don't know how, he's gonna get hurt, she's gonna get hurt, and you don't know how she's gonna take it, in a way. But I guess they kind of try to go back in the fact that she's an outsider, in terms of she's not from Omo, so she's kind of need to get in, sort of a new girl in town, and probably not really finding, her feet, amongst those groups, and it's not. And it's funny how she mentions, and I love that scene when she talks about her mother, and I know she had it easy because she's, and then it's so true. Sometimes
Mm.
feels there's another element that they don't get delve into it. But imagine if you're a kid of, I can't even imagine, of like, obviously there are a lot of advantages, but if like a famous person, or someone, like,
Mm-hmm.
you wanna find your own feet, and then it's like, oh well, but if my parents is, popular and stuff, why I'm not the same and stuff, and it's such a normal, things for a kid to go through.
Yeah, I think you're right, Zayn, and it's a good question, Luke. Yeah, because yeah, I think you're right. A lot of it is inferred, and a lot of it has happened before we see frame one in this movie. The thing is, I think school and the playground is very tribal, and that tribalness carries over into adult life too, into work, into actually many other facets of life. And that is that there's strength in numbers. So if you are with a group, if you have a group of friends, you're considered quite safe, potentially. If you haven't been able to make a friend, if you're a loner, you're an easy target. And and it all comes out in that conversation with her dad, right? He says, look, we've just moved here, we're new to the place. And she's like, new to the, we've been here for 2 years. When am I going to make that friend? 2 years, So yeah, I think you're right, Luke, in that we never see anything explicitly like why Agnes. But I think it's this has been happening for 2 years now because she's just easy, I think, and she doesn't have a group, she doesn't have a clan, she hasn't found her people, and the one person that has tries in this movie at her birthday party, she completely rebuffs.
That's great. I mean, it also, what I don't know if you felt it in the script, but what I like, that it's not a definite, like, even when the conversation, it's not designed in a way that, okay, this person is right, the other person is wrong. It's just a really back and forth, because in most films, when the parent gives, the like the wise advice, oh, when you get older and stuff, and then she comes back, yeah, but I don't want to wait 25 years. And it's so on point. Now I want to feel it now. Like, it's, you telling me in 25 years I'm going to be like, that's
Yeah,
your
exactly.
now. Like, come on.
For
And
for a 14-year-old, 25 years is two lifetimes. It's so
but
true.
there's no
It's so
comeback to
true.
it. And that's what is great, because it's there are some things that you need to navigate in life, regardless. You can't have the answer to everything. So you just have to find a way, and which doors to knock on and which ones don't, and it's, you only find out if you go through, like it, that's and that's, I think, the two different characters that kind of like mash together in a way, because they
Listen,
both lost in a different ways.
yeah, I think that what this movie shows so well is that being a kid and being an impressionable teenager is dangerous. And it's very important. Those are very important formative years. It's very important who you have around you. It's very important what your next choice is, what your next decision is. because you can be so stupid at that age. You really can. Getting into that stranger's back seat, that could have been the end of them. And it's funny that them making out for the first time is what puts him off. It's like, okay. But listen, I remember when I was around this age, 15 to 18.
Oh, I did so much stuff that when I think about now, just like makes my
Oh
skin
my
crawl.
like, how am I alive right now? And there was one time, I remember there was a big fight. We were all going to go and have a big fight, our group against this group, and we were going to meet at this cinema in Feltham. And I brought this weapon from the kitchen. It was a weapon my mum used to cook. And on one side, it was like a mini axe, like a scythe. And on the other side, it was a mallet. Now, guys, tell me, what the fuck am I going to do with this thing? I'm going to embed it in someone's skull? What am I going to do here? I must have watched 300 the day before or something. I don't know. And I show up to this fight with this weapon in my bag, like I'm going to use it. Someone else showed up with a gun, right? An unlicensed firearm. Like, we're going to war here. And I went and I took, fuck me, I hope the police never listen to this podcast episode. They won't. It's called Show Me Love. It's about a Swedish lesbian movie. That's not going to happen, let's be honest. But I took this weapon. I thought, let's not have it on me. And I hid it in these bushes by the cinema. So I wasn't on me, but it's easy access. In the middle of the fight, I can run over and pick it up and use it. And I think what the opposite group did was they never showed up. And instead, what they did was they tipped off the police that there's a big group of people at this cinema and they've got weapons on them or whatever. And so the police showed up. So we all dispersed, we ran, we hid in these toilets. But the police came and took a friend of mine who was known to them. He was always in trouble when he was young. And one day they showed up at his house. This was actually a day I was going to Amsterdam with some friends. He called me. He was like, I just got back from the police station. I was like, why? He said, well, funnily enough, they took me down to the station and they showed me grainy CCTV footage from the cinema of a guy in a hoodie, going and dropping this weapon into these bushes. And they said, who is that? And I told them, don't know. First time I met him, never seen him before. You know, I always wondered if, do you know what? I might ask Stefan to cut this. But I
incriminate yourself on the podcast.
Yeah. I always wondered if it would come back and bite me. And when I flew out to America and I was studying out there and they asked me to do my fingerprints, you know, I always thought that they'd be like, hey, we got you. But no, but I think about it and I think, how stupid was I? If anything had happened when I wasn't thinking back then with my, you know, not fully developed brain, I could have ruined my whole life. My whole life. Anyway, all of that to say, fucking Amal speaks to, you know, that really dangerous moment where you're still trying to figure things out, but you're not quite able to yet. I think that's the point.
A big part of it, especially what it sounds like from that story as well, and what we see in the film is kind of the element of peer pressure, and then also when you're a kid and you're in with like this group of people of a similar age, you almost get like this pack mentality, right? Where one, and you see it with kind of the cruelty in the high school cafeteria where one person starts, you know, being mean or bullying, and then everyone else doesn't really know what's actually going on. They just are all jumping in to just join the party, and because it's what the cool kid's doing or something like that. And I think everyone is guilty of getting involved in something like that.
And also, as kids, we judge others as well so much faster, you know, like on basic things and, you know, emotions as well. We're not thinking it through, you know, like obviously like in a critical lens. So that there's a lot of, you know, elements of that, and it's just also the whole small town thing as well, because there's a lot of tiny little bits in it as well that and like with multiple watch, when I rewatched it, it's like, oh, I didn't remember this bit, but like when
Mm,
Ellen's with the mother and mother's just watching this really boring show and stuff,
mm.
and then it's also like, this is such a great scene, like that's like, yeah, it's just really problematizes the situation, and like, what
Mm.
he's going, and even then he, like, there's a throwaway line about like, let's not talk about the father and stuff. So it's a lot of little
Mm.
hints as well about, like, kind of, yeah, like, but it's, I guess Swedish society works in a bit differently as well. So uh, I understand, some aspects of it as well. But yeah, it's a lot of things to unpack in a very short runtime, and as you mentioned, Chris.
You're so right, Zaylin. Even a scene like that, where Ellen's sitting with her mum watching boring daytime TV, that could seem like a throwaway moment, but that is so pointed, and that is so important in fleshing out just how small this town is, and how small the ambitions of the people who live in this town are. There's nothing wasted in this movie for such a small runtime. Every single thing is important. There's no filler. And that's really impressive from a writing standpoint as well. I'm glad you mentioned that.
That's exactly how I felt about Il Postino, which is also a film about being from a small town, right? It's just it's just so tight and so efficient in its storytelling.
Yeah,
Honestly,
that's why I
Zaylin,
thought that I would bring up, like, it's some similarities as well, and also, you mentioned, runtime, and obviously we usually talk about the score and the soundtrack, and obviously there are no actual original score, but
fuck, I didn't even
like there
realize.
are 19 songs played in this film, so it's like an 85-minute film, and then you put 19 songs, and actually one of the songs, which it's one of my favorite part of like the film, is that there's one song called Whirlwind, um, by Brother Daniel, the Swedish band, but he plays the song throughout the film, not at one go, so it's like he chops it up
Oh.
in different elements, and he even teases like a guitar solo in the middle of the film, and it's like he cuts it off. It's like, oh, I was really enjoying it, and then he comes back to it, like it's like towards the end of the film and stuff. So it's just, I,
Oh, interesting.
again, I have like little bits in it, and it's like, because I listened to, like, it's so good to revisit it and listen to the soundtrack, and it just brought me back, like it's some really good tunes in it, and it's like 19 songs in it, like that's a lot in a, like a film like that. But I guess, yeah, there was a lot of
It
the way it been edited and, together. It all was very compact.
Yeah, it must have made for a hell of a mixtape, this CD, for all the 1998 songs it's using. Well, for the time it was released, um, even especially that, I want to know what love is, when they're in the back of with the way the volume just spikes the moment that they connect with each other. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And honestly, Zaylin, now Moody Sinner's on my radar. I want to see
Oh,
more
for
from this
sure,
guy,
same. Absolutely.
This
Yeah,
is
his first three films are, I think, one of the best three starters for a career for that type of filmmaking. Because I really like Together. It's about living in a commune in the 70s. Vida Forever is his best film, but it's child trafficking, and it's a hard film, but it yeah, like it is a masterpiece. And then he's done something that like was terrible, but then he come back with We Are the Best, and he only done one film in English language, um, which this is Michelle Williams in it. I love Michelle Williams, obviously, through Kelly Reichardt as well, and it didn't get good reviews, but I really liked it. It's called Mammoth, and it's Gabriel Garcia Bernal as well, and it's just a great film. So his filmography is quite
shit.
interesting, and he's done a TV show as well, Gusta, that you guys would love. because it's all about this guy who's a child therapist. Again, like interesting, like I never even knew. Obviously, there is like, you know, you do therapy for children as well if you have some trauma and stuff. But and then random people start moving into his house, and it's a great TV series. So yeah, I recommend to
Very
check it out.
cool, man.
Filmography. But
Very
he hasn't
cool.
done anything for a long time because he's not like film is not the number one thing for him. So and hopefully, yeah, he's gonna do something very soon as well at some point.
Well, he is like the Swedish Ken Loach. Yeah. He will make a project in his own time when it suits him, and I am down for that. I'm totally down for that. Um, awesome. Any other final thoughts on Show Me Love?
I mean,
I think
yeah, I would just add that, like, one little trivia that you might wondering, or like the listeners who are wondering, that what did the actual town Åmo think about this title, especially that was such a huge, hit
Right.
in Sweden. He sold more tickets at the time than the Titanic, so it was an incredible success for independent film. But they obviously hated it at first, but then they embraced it, and they even started their own music festival because of the film, called fucking Åmo Festival.
Oh, come on.
Yes,
That
and so they embraced it, and because it was such a huge hit, and realizing, okay, all of them, like, there's a lot of people probably visit that location because of the film, and there's a groups festival that's been on from the 90s, so it got more attention as well. So I like those things when it's, because it wasn't even shot in Homo, so like, it's
right. He
done
cheated
by
it.
way, but it's they embrace it in the end. So now it's kind of famous for it.
Love that. Love that. What about yourself, Luke?
I think so. One note I have is that, so obviously Ingmar Bergman is the most monumental Swedish filmmaker, the most famous, and I read that he was a massive, massive fan of this film, and he heavily praised it, and probably the best accolade you could probably receive from anyone, let alone Ingmar Bergman, is he described it as a young master's first masterpiece, which I thought was quite nice.
That's
Ooh,
great.
wow.
Wow.
Wow. How do you, as a first-time filmmaker, hear that and not let that go to your head? That's a dangerous line, Ingmar Bergman.
Start writing poems, I guess. Yeah, it's
Yeah, and clearly he didn't let it go to his head. If you're saying his first three features were excellent, Zayn, wow, oh, that's great. Wow, that's amazing. Honestly, Bergman's another guy I need to dig into a bit more, because I hear about him all the time. I listen to podcasts all the time. His name is always there, but I've never really dug into his work. So yeah, maybe that's something to think about on this film club.
yeah, it's a
But
massive fan. He's for me, like, it's such a incredible writer as well. Like, he is. I don't think anyone ever in film captured human relationship as well, and so the psyche and the in depth that Bergman goes, and the film that, like, in the close-ups and so, like, there's a lot of things I see in music videos, right? This day and age, music videos, that I can look at it as like, that is a Bergman shot. That is, even people knowing that they following, and that's the beauty of other medium, that you could be influenced people, like the Seventh Seal and playing there's a lot of iconic things that is part of our culture now because of, like like an individual, and that we don't even realize, that the impact it had. And then, yeah, like, that's a great accolade to get from someone like that.
yeah, I when I flew to Hawaii for the Lost concert, should I make it a goal to mention Lost on every call and just try
Why not?
squeeze it in there? But
That's
when
so, let me tell you something. Yeah.
yeah, when I took the, God, what was it, 12, 13 hour trip, I downloaded on my laptop Fanny and Alexander, um, not realizing that is a 5 hour, 22 minute movie. And I, I, I liked it a lot. I really liked it. And I think I had subscribed to like a free trial on BFI or Curzon or something like that. And so I could only watch like half of it. And then I never returned to it before my trial ended. And I remember thinking, God damn it, man, I really need to finish that, because I'm like 3 hours in. The movie theoretically should be done by now. But yeah, there's still another 2.5 hours to go. But to what you were saying, Zaylin, he is going in on character relationships in such a compelling way. And that might be my first Bergman film.
Yeah, there is a lot. I mean, he's a very like he's a theater director, so he's very good with staging and dialogues, and you could some of his films you could tell that it feels like a theater production in a way, because it's the locations and stuff, but the level of details and the acting that he gets out of the characters, and in general, like his films are lot of like human, like elements of like questioning fate and the relationships, and just about elements of life as well. And he's done like not just dramas, but some quite funny films as well. So it's an interesting one. I think one thing with Bergman is that it would be good to rather jump on it, have a bit of curation of how you start and which films to start. There's a trilogy he's made as well, and stuff.
Okay.
So Funny Alexander is obviously a great one, but it's a heavy one to get into first. But it's a Christmas movie.
His filmography is
Yeah.
seriously dense, and I've heard all the big hitters, and I've seen a good chunk of them. But you look on Letterboxd, and there's just so much on there that I just never knew existed.
Oh, interesting. Have you, maybe Zaylin, would you ever, again, I know it all comes, it's more complicated than that, but would you ever consider a Bergman season at the Phoenix?
Yeah, we have done
Oh.
seasons, actually. Well, like his films usually come back. It's sometimes the difficulties, as you mentioned, is because the filmography is so huge. It's sometimes to get the licensing for some of the films. But even the Almodovar season we're doing, you would think that a very accessible and celebrated director like Almodovar, that all of his films you'd be able to play it in the cinemas, but that's, I would say, only 40% of the films actually available sometimes, and then now Curzon's doing some re-releases and stuff, so that's changing hopefully. But yeah, it's sometimes there are some films that you want to show and then you can't and stuff, but we always show Funnel Alexander, and I always try to bring in a persona and Seventh Seal. I think that's Mark Ramone's one of his favorite films. So,
Persona is super popular, right? I always see it at a lot of independent cinemas, and it seems to always be really busy. It's got such a big following.
yeah,
And it's a beautiful movie, so I totally get it.
it's a writing masterclass. So it's I think if someone wants to get into film, screenwriting, character, like there is so many things in that film. So, but these are a lot of, how to say it, like I went through a period in my life, and when I first found out about Bergman, I literally went on a like in Hungary, like I went to the we used to have not blockbusters, but the video rental stores, and I was like, how many Bergman films
Give me all of them.
Give me all of them.
Yeah.
Like 2 weeks, I called in sick, like, I don't go into, like, I'm gonna watch these things because, and you can't do it any other ways, because some of them you put you in depression as well.
I see.
You start thinking about it. But then you come back out of it is like, well, I gained something. I gained so much, so, but it's a grind in a way if you do that, because like it's so many things going on there, and it's you have to pick up the pace of the filmmaking, and some of them very slow film, some of them work differently, and the angles and so. But yeah, it's a good thing to get into.
Question: if you, for instance, there's a Bergman title that you don't have the licensing for, could you reach out to Bergman via his representatives specifically,
Uh,
or is that not possible?
it's sometimes like it depends on who owns the film, because it's not
Oh,
always um, like, like some companies who buy films and you just don't know who owns the right. Like
ah,
for instance, I give you an example. For Pride, we needed to show a film, and I wanted to show a film, and we ended up showing The Portrait of a Lady on Fire, beautiful film as well.
great film,
Uh,
yeah.
but I wanted to show Paris is Burning because I thought, like that's such a classic, and can't get the license. Well, you can get a license for an incredible amount of money. That like
Uh-huh.
the owners, they said it's only for special events, only for Q&As, only if you show it in this. So we're talking about like over
Mm,
£1,000. So that there are certain films you can do it, and certain films you can't.
I
So
see.
it's a constant thing. But yeah, Bergman's, there's so many options. So like at some point, yeah, I'm sure we're gonna do another season because I love him, and he's. There's always, sometimes there's an anniversary or like a topical film that
Right.
it's worth But Swedish and Danish and Norwegian, I love Scandinavian films. I mean, now we live
Honestly.
in a world of like um, like even Ruben S. Östlund, obviously, to
Oh,
Han, or
amazing.
like he's also growing up on Bergman. A lot of great Danish directors, Norwegians.
Mm,
So yeah, it's a kind of part of the filmmaking, map that I'm really fond of.
Thomas Vinterberg is another guy who I think is incredible. The guy who did Another Round with Mads Mikkelsen. I think he works with Mikkelsen a lot, and he's someone I could watch any one of his movies on any given day. But anyway,
Oh, and The Hunt. The Hunt is probably
The
is one of my
Hunt
favorite Scandinavian
was
films. Yeah.
so good.
It
Yeah,
might be one of
so
the
good.
great acting performances. Is really that it's very memorable. Like I always, it always comes up to mind. Like you always have the classics. But there is
Mm.
one that I'm really really high on. Yeah.
All right, but anyway, we digress. We could talk for hours on this subject for sure. But for Show Me Love ratings, let's do ratings. I was sitting on a 4, and y'all have pushed me to a 4.5. So
Wow, that's
congratulations.
strong. Wow.
I've gone up to a 4.5. What stops me from going to a 5? I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know. But I think the movie's great, and my appreciation for it has jumped on this call.
I'm in the exact same boat as you. I
Really?
was at a 4. I think now. Well, I was originally debating between a 4.5 and a 4.
Uh-huh.
I think I'm very happy to give it a 4.5.
Really?
But I'm also the same as you. Like it's hard to kind of give a reason why it's not a
Yeah,
5. But um, I think 4.5 is still very fair for a great movie like this.
agreed. Yeah.
God, that's
Zaylin?
fascinating. Guys, that is incredible. That is great to hear from me. And I think the roles are reversed because I am
Oh!
the one who usually don't know why I doesn't give a 5. But in this case, it's a 5 for me. So, yeah,
Oh!
it is a 5. Yeah, it's just the reason being is because for this film to be made in the 90s, and like the fact it made, like not just a queer community but independent filmmaking, and it's just to make it, like the amount of money we made for this, and I just really enjoyed revisiting, like the nothing, like all the feelings I had in the past, they all come back, and we came back stronger with the nostalgia hitting me. So I can't fault it, like I have to give a 5.
I mean, you didn't even give Il Postino a 5. So
Yeah,
that
I think
is.
Il Postino is the only element, was obviously that we talked about some of the ending, but that Il Postino is probably a 5 as well, to be honest. So it's just
I
a
think this is
yeah.
I I think this is now our joint top rated movie we've done on the film club
Is it
with
really?
Kes. I think so. Yeah.
Well,
Because
I got the same.
Kez is
Kes was a
five.
5 across the board, except for Stefan, right? Yeah,
Oh no, so Kez might be a bit higher then, because I think.
Kes. Yeah,
Okay.
It's not a bad company to be in, that's for sure.
yeah, exactly,
And it's
exactly.
because maybe there's something about like debut filmmakers that sometimes like there are some like well, obviously with Ken Loach he followed it up with
Oh, honestly,
an
yeah.
incredible amount of work afterwards as well. So,
But Zalan, keep showing up because I think we're getting to a point where we're relying on you to show up with some real hitters here. So yeah, another one, and I've got to say, Il Postino has become one of my favorite movies.
Literally
So-
same. I was thinking about this other day. It's one of the movies where at the time I loved it, but it's one I found myself going back and thinking about
Yeah.
so much.
Dude, I was I didn't show you this, Luke, because you're not on social media. But 2 weeks ago, I rented an Airbnb in Kent. It was like a farmhouse for Carrie Ann's birthday. And on this farmhouse, it was so fucking beautiful. And they've got like this open shed to these fields and these hills where at night you can watch the sunset. And we watched France versus Spain and we were playing Scrabble. And I looked to the right and they had this bike mounted, and it's like a wind bike where the wind will make the wheels go. And it was like the bike out of Il Postino. And I was like, wait here. And I ran over and I did like this shot, which was quite nice and cinematic. It needed to be a bit more steady. But I went from the wheel as it was moving out. And then when I put it on Instagram, I used Luis Bakalov's score for Il Postino to
what a
underscore
great
it.
score. Yeah.
And I was just like, Il Postino's taken over my life, man. Like,
I mean, that's music is always good. Like sometimes there are some like music like themes that is just so powerful, and then they just stays with you all the time.
always. Yeah,
And
always.
that is a great one. Yeah,
It's
that
one
is
of the
great.
it's one of the all-time great scores. I'm convinced of it now. Yeah. But amazing. Zalan, thank you for this pick. It was brilliant. As always, great discussion, and I'm glad I've seen it. Truly.
Yeah, it's if there's anything comes up with Madison, I will let you know. But if you get a chance to see his other films, maybe go with together. So the dramatic element not straight to forever, but if it's a rainy day and you want to feel a little bit of gloom and hope and drama, that's the one.
Good to know. If I do,
Sounds
I will
good.
reach out. Yeah, I will reach out, sir. Excellent. All right. As for the next movie, our next film has been chosen by Larry Taylor, who, like you, Zalan, always makes an interesting choice. And he has chosen the 1993 movie directed by Joel Schumacher, Falling Down, starring Michael Douglas. Have you both seen it?
Yes, I have seen
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
It's
Okay.
good to watch it again though. Like it's been a long time.
I have not. So I've
I
heard
think
all
it will
about
make a
it.
fun
and-
discussion for sure.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Good. Good. Well then, excellent. Well then, looking forward to that. Thank you both,
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
and I will see you
See you on the
soon.
next one.
See you on the next one. And for all listening, thank you all for joining us today. And until the next one, which will be Falling Down, please do feel free to watch along with us. This is the Phoenix Cinema Podcast Film Club, and we hope you enjoyed listening. Happy watching, and bye for now.